This is Words Aptly Spoken, which comes from Proverbs 25:11. A word fitly spoken is like apples of gold in settings of silver. The written word is a precious treasure. We want to preserve written knowledge for God's glory and as an anchor to the history of the church and its classical conversations. We hope to encourage the reading of words and of the word. Well, welcome to Words Aptly Spoken, where Jennifer Courtney, Timothy Knotts, and I discuss books from the Classical Conversations curated curriculum. Today is Wednesday, February 28th, 2024, and I'm Lee Bortons. And I just realized that's not the right date. It's Wednesday, February 29th. Happy leap year. So today we're going to have with us Kelly Wilt and Brittany Lewis, both curriculum developers for Classical Conversations and Multimedia. And we're in the middle of a month of exciting products that will help all of us appreciate the fine arts more. So Jennifer, why don't you tell us what's going on?
Yeah, we've been talking about cursive writing and drawing with the Prescript series. We've talked about the Classical Acts and Facts history cards, which have beautiful images on them as well as stories. We looked at Classical Acts and Facts artist and composer cards and had a great conversation last week about a painting. And now today we're going to listen to some music and try to repeat some of what we did with the art.
Yeah, the last few lessons have been really quite good. I say lessons, they've been a lesson to me, so I appreciate you guys sharing all that you know. For folks that want to see what we've been talking about, you can go to @Lee Bortons on YouTube, or you can go to leebortons.com in order to click on the archive and the calendar in order to see past podcasts as well as what books are upcoming, and I just prepare for later in the year. And I realized I got the date wrong again. It's Thursday, February 29th, 2024. Did I get it right that time?
Yes.
Yeah. So today, apparently, I didn't know any leap year traditions, so my brother-in-law looks them up, and one of them is for young women to wear a red petticoat and ask somebody to marry her. I don't know what the two have in common, but that was something new I learned today.
I
So
didn't know about the red petticoat. I did know about the women proposing, though, which is quite a cute tradition.
yeah, so so real quick, you only have a few hours left. If you know a young man that's hesitant, send your girls.
Yeah. Oh, very good. Well, I'm glad we're talking about music today. I just had some music of nature outside my window because in a way that I cannot fathom, it's raining ice, even though it's 48 degrees. Um, so it's too cold for hail, but too warm for sleet. So I'm unclear what's going on. But in any event, it was a lovely afternoon sound. And so we got to listen to some music of nature. So as we've been talking, Lee, throughout the curriculum in Classical Conversations, we have some opportunities for kiddos to look at, and families too, to look at art and to listen to music. So why is music an important part of a classical education?
Well, just like you referred to the sound of nature, I mean, a quick answer is because you have a heartbeat. Every one of us is wired for rhythm and for the idea of a symphony and how we integrate into the world around us. And of course, as Christians, we know we live a liturgical life where the Lord does the same thing day after day, lets the sun come up. And so there's a rhythm to our seasons, and all the various things in his creation have that same kind of rhythm that hopefully leads to harmony rather than to discord. And so in order for our children to recognize harmony versus discord, it's really important for them to have the opportunity to study great works of art, both in drawing and in music. And so, we've had this focus the last week on the artists that are drawing things, as well as now this classical music for dummies today, which we talked about last time was not such a great title, but it's effective. And one of the reasons I was drawn to the book was because I really am a dummy when it comes to classical music, and that book helped me a lot in raising our children to appreciate music besides pop stuff on the radio. And so I wanted to share it with other people.
Yeah, and I love thinking about too. We some of us do feel like dummies, and yet we all sing to our children.
Mhm.
We all worship at church. So we are participators in music. And this book and what the exercise we're going to do today just help us to do that better and better each time, to be better at listening. So I will, before we get into serious conversation, I will tell a funny story about when I was newly married without children of my own. And my cousin visited with his little boy, who was probably 18 months old, and he was playing in one of our apartment bedrooms with me. And some people were watching a movie, and this very ominous music came on. And he looked up from the blocks that had been wholly absorbing his attention. And he looked at me and he goes, "Uh-oh, something bad about to happen." And it was one of those moments where I was reminded of how much music affects us, even when we're not quite paying attention to it. And so it's important to pay attention to it in the right ways because of that. So, all right. So Kelly, since you work on our foundations materials, you spend some time with thinking about how foundations tutors are going to listen to music in community and use this resource, Classical Music for Dummies. So do you want to talk about the in-community and at-home use of this resource?
Sure, I'd be glad to. I think anyone who's ever visited a foundations classroom will see the power of music as a tool for memory. And so on Community Day, not only will our students in the last 6 weeks of each cycle be exposed to the orchestra and to beautiful classical music and practice the art of active listening, but if families are there in the morning at the very beginning of Community Day, they'll also see students singing history sentence songs and using music to be able to cement those blocks of memory for our littlest learners as well. But when it comes to classical music for dummies, you will see this resource utilized most often during hands-on fine arts. And like I said, the last 6 weeks of each foundation cycle. It's a wonderful resource both for tutors and for families alike, because as Lee said, if you are not a person who considers yourself to be a quote unquote music person, it is a wonderful, gentle introduction to classical music. And one of the things that I appreciate about this resource is it encourages you to actively listen. We live in a culture where that is a lost art, where you keep your attention focused so that you can, in the spirit of our 5 core habits, attend to details using your senses. And so in those 6 weeks of hands-on fine arts, we give our youngest learners an opportunity to hone those attending skills by both singing of our orchestra song, which by now is very beloved. Even my Challenge 4 students still love to sing it together in rounds in community, but also just being able to listen to these pieces of music and enjoy the stillness so that you can attend. So families at home, if you have this resource, not only is this a great introduction for your students, it's a great introduction for you. And it's also a wonderful tool for Community Day because you will get exposed to some fantastic pieces of music and hopefully cultivate an appreciation for them yourself.
Yes, I love that. And it's so tempting. I appreciate what you said about that gift of active listening, because it can be really tempting for us to fill it up with all kinds of other things, to read a book about Beethoven or right. But it's
Yes.
so important for us to just be still and train ourselves to listen. So we're going to model that here in a little bit. All right. Well, Brittany, so you own the reasoning strand for challenge. So how does this encounter with music and foundations help prepare students and families for challenge?
I can testify that it actually does, since my kids have all grown up through foundations program and gone on to the challenge program. And I was just sharing with some of you before we started recording that it was actually sparked a love of music and foundations for my kids, especially classical music. And then as my students started to grow in the challenge program, they got to study math and motion and started to think about the questions in philosophy and theology about what is truly beautiful. And we still need to practice those attention skills of learning to really listen and to actually hear, which can help us love our neighbor. So getting to do enjoy beautiful music and in community as a foundations kid, I think that love continues to grow as we study it throughout the program. And as we know in scripture, we are commanded to love the Lord with our minds, and that includes our imagination And one of my favorite verses in Philippians 4:8 tells us what to think about. One of the things we're told to think about is what is lovely. So I know that the study of music and foundations grew that desire and recognition of what is truly beautiful, because we've got great things, great works of music before our children. And that even inspired some of my children to become musicians themselves. And that has been a great lifeline for them, especially as my son has served as a Marine. He's been deployed right now. And I thought, how is he going to survive without his guitar and playing with others and worshiping the Lord that way? And sure enough, he found a way to do that and has testified that it's been such a glorious experience of beauty in a place that isn't always beautiful where he is, and a place that's dark and hard. He still knows that his soul craves that, desires beauty. And Plato said that the object of education is to teach us to love what is beautiful. So I think that's exactly what the full program does. We're really good as Christians about thinking about what is good and true. And I think sometimes we can neglect what is beautiful. But I know for my experience with my family and what I've seen in my students, there is something about growing this love for really lovely music that has been a great blessing to them and to me too, as I've learned alongside them.
Yeah, I love that, Brittany. I have a similar story with my son when he went off to Washington, D.C. for a semester. And it was his first time to be away from home, and he was stressed. And my mom and I got the opportunity to visit him. And so we bought him a keyboard at Costco, which was a lovely thing to do, except that we were in an Uber. So I'll let you guys imagine what it was like to get the piano back to the dorms in the Uber. But it was a way of him entering into singing and enjoying music with the people around him when he was homesick and a little bit stressed. And so that's lovely. You wove a lot of great ideas together about just regarding beauty from scripture, and then also ideas from Plato, who, people often quote him saying that music education is what prepares us to reason, which seems odd to us. So as I turn it over to Tim, you can maybe touch on that. Because we do find that sometimes we have a hard time talking about music. And so Tim's going to share with us maybe how families can have good conversations about it, maybe without having to delve straight into all the intricacies of music theory.
Yeah. It's a little intimidating for some people, especially classical music, because it's viewed as being very sort of academic or very highbrow and hard. And in some ways it can be, and some pieces are, but it isn't all that way. Music is part of God's creation. In fact, it's one of the things that's permanent. At the beginning, the morning stars sang together, and in the end, the saints and the angels are going to sing to God forever into eternity. So music is and was and always will be. It's one of those few things that we know from Scripture is eternal. And so participating in it and doing it to the best of our ability is a way that we can actually honor the Lord, and and recognize his created order, the way he made things. Again, just to touch on the classical bit and to carry on where Brittany left off a little bit with Plato, he said, more than anything else, rhythm and harmony find their way into the inmost soul and take strongest hold upon it. We know that, like Kelly brought up, setting words to music helps us remember them. That we're really good at remembering hymns that we sing a lot, but maybe not so good at memorizing all of our Bible verses that we ought to memorize, often because we have the music to help us. But we also know that music does things to us in other ways than just implanting stuff in our memory. It changes our mood. It changes our impression of things. Like Jennifer, you were just saying about the little boy who heard the scary music and knew something bad was going to happen. We all know that when we hear it in a movie, as soon as the music turns creepy, we get on the edge of our seats and like, uh-oh, what's going to happen? You almost wish that your life had a soundtrack like that, so you knew when something bad was going to happen. You could be prepared. But we do have things that we script in our life. Wedding music is pretty identifiably wedding music, or at least traditionally it was. You knew what was happening. Even liturgical music, like you brought up, Lee, they were cues for parts of our life that were important to us and triggered things in us and for us. And it plays on our imagination too. When we hear music, we inevitably start to see things and imagine things, like what's going on when we hear this music. And part of that is what we're going to do together in a little while. And that's a great way to have conversations with our kids about music that engages the imagination, both sort of the creative imagination and even to some degree the moral imagination, because we can use the language of music as a shared experience to talk about things that are hard to talk about. We talk about scary music. We can talk to our kids about what it feels like to be scared. And we talk about angry music. We can talk with our kids about those angry feelings they have inside and why maybe it's not good to act on those things. So music is a language. Some people talk about it as the universal language, and it's not quite. But but within our cultural context, it is a shared experience, and so it's powerful for that.
Yeah. I happened to turn on the local classical station this morning, which I haven't done in a while. And my soul was fed because most of you know that I love Shakespeare, and they were doing a whole morning of different composers who had either had been inspired by Shakespeare's plays or had actually provided the background music for performances. And so I got to hear pieces from A Midsummer Night's Dream and from Romeo and Juliet, and it was a lovely addition to my morning. And most of us would probably recognize one of the ones from Midsummer Night's Dream because it's the wedding march. Speaking of weddings and recognizable music, that's where we take that song from Mendelssohn's composition for A Midsummer Night's Dream. So we have associations, whether we always remember it or not. We do have that ability to relate to the music.
So I recently watched this movie about just an opera. I think an opera singer. I think it was all fiction, but it was based on this competition she was entering in. And her music teacher, in order to teach her to go slow and to be humble and love all music, for her first audition, not audition, performance in front of a large London audience, had her sing Mozart's Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. And it was so beautifully done. And I would never have thought that you could sing a song like that's so familiar that we sing to our children at night could be done in such a glorious manner. So just reminded me that, not to make light of small things is what the scripture tells us, and also not to make light of small beginnings. And so for a lot of listeners, this might be the first time that you've had to think about your 4, 5, 6-year-old and music and what they're going to be able to do. So I just really appreciate you guys having so much insight and more experience than I do in this realm. So it's time to thank our sponsor. ClassicalConversationsBooks.com is where the books discussed can be purchased. If you go to leebortons.com and click on the archive for Words Aptly Spoken, you'll see the previous podcasts, and you can click on them for those links to purchase the books, as well as upcoming books that we will be looking at. And I just want to encourage all of you to, as you find a podcast that you enjoy, go ahead and let other people know about it. We make these so that as you purchase books and use them in classical conversations, you get a little bit of tidbits and wisdom from people that have used them for many, many years with many, many children. So I hope these conversations are helpful for you. So next week, we're going to look at curriculum elements and additional resources that are associated with the Essentials of Language program that we're really proud to offer across the globe. And so I look forward to discussing just how just little words matter in that context too. Okay, so Jennifer, now what are we going to do?
Right. Well, normally if we were looking solely at a book, we are talking about classical music for dummies, but if we were looking solely at a book, we would do a close reading of one of the passages from it or a couple of the passages from it. But instead today, since the guest of honor is music, we're going to listen to a piece of music and practice how we might enjoy this as a family with our kiddos. So Kelly, what are we going to listen to and why did you choose it?
Today we're going to listen to Claude Debussy's La Mer, And this is actually one of the pieces of music that is utilized in our Foundations curriculum in Cycle 3 during the final 6 weeks of hands-on fine arts in community. And I chose this piece because, quite frankly, this is one of my favorite pieces that we use in Foundations, and I love the feeling of it. So some of the questions that we're going to ask in our conversation today will probably reflect that, but it's a great springboard for and scope for imagination. So that was why I chose it for today.
Nice. Well, I'm glad you chose it. 20 years ago, the very first cycle of Foundations that I was in was cycle 3. And my kids were introduced to this piece, and I had the classical station on in the car, and they were doing the daily almanac and talking about a hard freeze that happened in Paris. And they mentioned Debussy, and my kids said, turn it up, we know who that is. Which was charming for me, since really we had only listened to his one piece in Foundation. They thought they knew all about Debussy. And so we turned it up and we learned some more about him. So, all right. So Tim, tell us, what is the goal of this exercise and what we are supposed to do while the music's playing?
Kelly, I like your little Anne Shirleyism there, by the way. Yeah, so Kelly already brought up the idea of active listening. In our culture, we surround ourselves with all kinds of music. It's on at the gas station pump, it's in the elevator, it's the department store, it's on the loudspeaker at the grocery store, it's on in the car. Sometimes we do a better job of making that intentional by putting on maybe some memory work to listen to rather than the classical rock station or whatever as you listen to as a family. But here, our goal is to really try and give the whole of our attention to the music. So for some people, that means maybe closing your eyes and listening to try and sort of block out some other things that are going on. I want to encourage you that some students will doodle while they're listening. And for some students, that can be a big distraction. And for other students, that's actually helping them to listen. So if you know your student and you know whether that's a help or a hindrance, you can make that available or not. But for us today, we're going to be listening to try to find a couple of things. Number one is to really try to identify the sort of emotional content of the music. What's it doing to the insides of us as it's being performed, and what kind of musical ideas or patterns do we hear? Because that's one of the ways that our brains make sense of things. Is our brains just automatically look for patterns in what we're hearing or seeing. So we're going to listen for some of those things. Normally we would listen to a whole movement of this. The Foundations kids would. It's 7 or 8 minutes long, this movement. For the sake of our time, because we don't have 7 or 8 minutes left to listen to it and then have a good conversation, we're only listening to maybe about 3 minutes of it. And so we'll miss out on some of the loveliness that our students would encounter, but we'll get a little bit and get to practice our conversation. So I've got it queued up for us. This is the third movement of La Mer, which is a bigger piece. And this particular movement has some fun parts, and I'm not even going to tell you what it's called or anything. We're just going to listen to it. So here we go. If you need to turn your volume up a little bit to hear it well, feel free to do that. hate to cut us off there. It's just getting exciting, but that's about the time we have to listen before we have a conversation. So, all right, Kelly, did you want to start us off with some questions?
Sure. So you got it right off at my favorite part, Tim. I'm so disappointed. All right. So the questions that I'd like to ask actually are framed in the mindset of a Foundations family. And we know our little people love to talk about themselves. So the first question that I have for you is a question about you. What mood are you in today? What are some words that would describe the mood that you're in today?
Well, it's gray and rainy at my house, as I said, and it's afternoon. So I'm a little sleepy and sort of
Mm.
slow moving at the moment.
Yeah. Same here. It's been a very eventful week for us in the Borton's family, and I'm ready for a nap. But I found that music was actually waking me up.
Ah, okay. Okay. Brittany, what about you? What mood are you in today? What are some words that would describe your mood?
Joyful.
Ah,
So,
okay.
mhm. I
Very
had good news
good.
today, so I feel joyful, like just happy-hearted. So
Wonderful.
that just helped, got added to the beauty. So that's good.
Wonderful. All right. So, how did listening to this piece of music make you feel? Did it change your mood? And Lee's already alluded to the fact that it did for her. Did it change your mood at all listening to it? Brittany's nodding yes. How did it
Yeah,
change your mood?
well, it was just exciting. I felt like actually the way that Lee said it was waking up, because I'm usually sleepy right now. I mean, maybe it helped that I had coffee, but I think the mood of the music, the exciting build, I wanted to pay attention, and it's like a drama.
Wonderful. So Foundations families take note. If your children are drowsy in the afternoon and you need to wake them up, this is a tool you can utilize. Use La Mer.
Mm.
So like I said, the name of this piece is La Mer. And Jennifer, I'm going to direct this question to you because I know you know the answer. What language is the title and what does that mean?
It's French and it means the sea.
Very good. Very good.
So not too
So,
far out from the Latin word. So
continue. Explain.
well, mare, and it's not far from the Spanish word or the Portuguese word or the Italian word. It's one of those that has made its way into most of the languages almost intact.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, do you think, like us, the ocean, the sea has moods? What do you think? Does the ocean have moods?
We definitely describe it that way.
We do. We've described ourselves as being sleepy. So when you close your eyes and you picture the ocean, can you picture sleepy waves?
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to Brittany saying it was exciting, we can picture exciting waves as well. So how can, oh, go ahead, Lee.
Oh, it's good. The mood also can around the ocean, I think is really reflected by the light it can make and the clouds, and it's just so vast that the ocean itself, you can't help but see how the sky creates the mood of the water also.
Oh, I love that because I can think of music that I've heard in the past that would make me think of light shining on the water and the glimmering and the softness. Was this piece one of those pieces for you guys? Do you feel softness?
I did not. We went to Clearwater, Florida last year, and it was a good name for it. It was clear and it was still, and it was very sunny while we were there, and it was a very calm ocean. It was more like being in the lake. But I have been to other places on different kinds of weather days where the ocean is actually quite frightening. And so this was much more dramatic to me. Not like Clearwater, not still.
Right, right. So how can a composer show us the different moods of an ocean? For instance, what instruments might we hear for soft and gentle waves? What instruments do you think might produce a sound like that, soft and gentle?
So to be able to answer that, you need to know what instruments names are and what they do
That's
for
right. That's right. So they'd better not miss the first week when we sing the orchestra song, right?
Yeah, because I was trying to identify when they opened up Lemaire, you could tell he was trying to replicate the sounds of water moving. And I couldn't tell if it was like a slight timpani or something across the drum,
Mhm.
or if it was another instrument I'm just unfamiliar with. But it
Right.
seemed like there was some sort of percussion instrument that he was,
Yeah.
but it might not have been, because I'm said I'm not real good at
Right.
identifying.
Sounded like a
Right.
timpani to me too. So
Yeah.
is that
Think
what it was?
so.
Tim is nodding. Does that mean that's what it
Yeah,
was?
that long, slow roll, right?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
And it was
Uh,
scary. It was like, it was
Mhm.
setting us up for not great things yet. I think great things are coming in the piece, but it
mhm,
doesn't open up that way. It's a little bit setting you up to
mhm.
go. Like I felt like there was almost like an old black and white noir film noir where some woman's running down the beach all by herself, and you don't know why she's running down the beach all by herself.
Yes. Yes. I love that. I love that
Uh,
mental image of her running down the beach and thinking that the waves are crashing. Did our ocean change as we listened to the piece, or did it stay the same? What did you guys attend to? Was our ocean consistent, or did it seem to shift in its mood?
it was
I
definitely.
think it shifted.
Oh yeah, sorry. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
go
Brittany.
ahead. You go ahead, please.
You could just hear those giant waves forming as the music
Mhm.
built up and came back down and built up and came back down.
Mhm.
It's fun.
Mhm.
Sorry, Brittany, go ahead.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. It reminded me of days at the beach in North Carolina where we've had um, storms whipping up the ocean, and all of a sudden we had to grab everything and head out because the wind was so high.
Very
But
good.
after about a minute, though, it changed a lot. It almost like the
Yeah.
darkness went by and it was almost twinkly, like, okay, so this thing happened that wasn't,
Mhm.
you don't know what it is, but now you have a moment to breathe and look around and see
Mm.
what the results were of it. It was lighter sounding for a short piece.
Yes,
Mhm.
yes. So if you're
Mhm.
thinking about being at the beach, being at the ocean, at the beginning of our piece, do you feel like this was a sunny day? Would you have sat on a blanket at the beach? I see Lee shaking your head. No, I agree with you. Did not feel like a sunny day. Um, why or why not? What gave you clues to that?
Well, once you got to the top of every building up, there was a giant cymbal crash.
Yes.
It doesn't
Yeah.
sound like a sunny, pleasant day on the beach. Sounds like a big crashing wave to me.
Yes, yes. Did you feel as if the lifeguard would be telling everyone to come in because maybe lightning was about to strike?
Um,
I'm
Yes.
trying to figure out though why it seems dark, because I go to the ocean a lot and I love
Mhm.
crashing waves. That's when I'm out in the water.
Mm.
I want to be rolled
Mhm.
over by that movement. It's
Mhm.
joyful and fun.
Mhm.
And but
Right.
so the crash of the cymbal reminded me of that. But yet, what was it? I mean, I'm asking you as musicians, what
Mhm.
was that undertone that made me know it was not a fun crashing wave?
Mm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
there's some things going on down there underneath the obvious,
Mhm.
right? These subtle things down in the orchestra that are
Right.
setting up parts that speak to us about scariness or
Mhm.
Mhm.
unsettledness, right? That or something that's kind of ominous.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Mhm. I felt like when we were listening, just hearing that low rumble of the drums almost felt like I was sitting at the ocean and there I could hear thunder rolling in the
Mhm.
distance. And then the
Mhm.
crashes reminded me of lightning. And so I
Mhm.
felt almost as I was listening, I could feel my body moving back and forth as I was listening, almost as if I was being tossed by the waves. And, for families who are asking questions like this to their children, you might see your children have a physical response when they're listening to the music because their eyes are closed and they're able to tune out all of the other things around them and just focus on the sensory experience that is active listening. So, thinking
Mhm.
about this experience, are there other experiences you can think of in nature that you've observed which also seem to have mood, like this piece?
You mean like animals taking flight or elephant migrating and marching? Or is that the kind of thing
Yes,
you're thinking of?
Mhm.
yes. Not necessarily the same mood as this piece, but
Mhm.
just mood. And maybe it's
Mhm.
mood that you feel when you see those things happening, or moods that you sense
Mhm.
So
because of
I
what you're
had
seeing.
experience yesterday outside my window. I have a giant picture window next to my desk, and I don't live in a rural area. I live in a city, but there is wildlife. And yesterday there was a giant red-tailed hawk swooping down on some kind of prey right in my yard. And so he just kept swooping down. And then something was shrieking. I never did figure out what the prey was, but whatever it was right there. And the hawk would circle up and then he'd come back down, and the squeaking. And this just kept going on. I was having a really hard time concentrating on my work because I was wanting to watch the hawk. And I had this moment, knowing that we were doing this today too, that I was thinking, I really wish I was good at composing music, because this dramatic swoop down of the hawk.
Yes.
And then that moment of relief when he goes away and you think maybe he won't come back. And then he does come back. And so that'd be a great musical piece if I were only good enough.
Well, and I agree with you, Jennifer. I think there's a sameness to that experience and what we just heard, right? I think we've already described the swelling of the music and the rumbling of the drums building up to the crescendo where we have the loud sound, and how we had an emotional response to that as we were listening. So Jennifer, this kind of dovetails right into my final question that would be geared toward foundations age students in a family. If you were composing a piece of music about your day at the ocean, what types of sounds would you include? Maybe what are some describing words you would use to describe the sea?
Like swoosh or crash or maybe rolling. I don't know if a little kid would say rolling, but older.
Maybe the sounds of the seagulls, the shrieking cries of the gulls.
Yes. Yes.
I was thinking about your earlier question. If I had to think of an instrument that went with our experience at Clearwater, I definitely would not sound like this piece we just listened to. So I was trying to think, what would be the instrument that would be the quietest, calmest ocean? The best I could come up with was the oboe. It's pretty hard to be threatening on an oboe. Like, when you're hearing the violin runs in this song, they're pretty scary sounding. Hard to make the oboe sound like that.
That's true. That's true.
That's true.
Well, you guys did great. And Tim, I'll pass it off to you for our next set of questions.
Well, we're just about out of time, which is fine.
Oh dear.
Because really from here, even with older students, we can have the same kind of conversation. We're going to engage their imagination and talk about the same things. And as you can see, we don't necessarily have to have an extensive repertoire of technical terminology. We didn't go into chord structures or instrumentation beyond just naming a few instruments.
The thing about that though is, for me, not for a little child, who wants to know more, is like when Jennifer could say the oboe, I could not have said that. I don't know enough about the technicality of it all, and so I would like to be able to know more. So these are really great beginning questions to help them just to learn to listen and appreciate it. But I just want families to know that we don't expect to leave you there, that there's more we can do.
There's a lot more to learn. But this is a great way to encounter this music and then to be able to talk about it and to have a shared experience. And that way, when you do go to the ocean, and go visit the beach, or if you have a storm that blows by your house, you can have that conversation of, hey, doesn't that remind you of? And you're integrating the whole experience of the way that these composers encountered nature, and then they brought those sounds into their music, and we get to experience them 100 years later. We're encountering this ocean that WC was describing for us.
Something I just took Lily to hear a choral, a touring choral. It was very good from Grove City College, and just excellent. And they were in a big auditorium, which kind of sucked the sound away. And I've seen enough chorals and enough concerts. I knew these kids were good. And so I looked over at Lily thinking, surely like she must be getting bored, because I'm used to that kind of music, just having it blow in your face and your body vibrates. And it's just so wonderful. And she sat like a stone the entire time. And when it was halftime, the intermission, I asked her if she was enjoying it, and she was like very excitedly saying yes. And then she said my favorite piece was, and she had never heard it before, and she could kind of hum it back and tell me the words that she'd heard. And choral music's not easy to hear the words of. So she was just really listening. And she said, "How long's it been?" And I said, "It's 45 minutes." She said, "No, that was just 3 or 4 minutes." And so to know that, and she has no musical training, but to know that what she's got in foundations and her focus on the things that she gets a lot of training in and the attention that she does in other areas, I could see it that night carried over to a new experience. And so parents don't need to feel like, you're failing if you didn't start with music and when they were 2, or you didn't start with sports when they were 4, or you didn't start with art when they were 7. Just jump in and work on enjoying all the fine arts.
Yeah, I love that. Well, that's probably going to have to be our last word. I think. Are we out of time? I think we are.
Good. All right. Well, everybody, we'll look forward to next week, and see you later.
All right.
Happy leap year.
Yeah.
Happy leap year.
Thanks
Thank
to
you.
McKelly. Bye, guys.